So we are live from Seattle right now. Looks like it's 11 o'clock. So yeah, let's go ahead and get started. So first off, thanks for joining me today. It looks like we've got folks from all over the world. We've got some alumni travelers in with us. We've got some frequent visitors to Africa, some first timers. And I even saw some names on there that are currently working with me on some itineraries in Africa. So this is great. Looking forward to sharing some knowledge with you guys. So what we're going to do is talk a little bit about Africa and how to plan your trip. So my name is Chris Moriarty. I work for Wildland Adventures as the Africa Program Director. Wildland has been around for 30 years. We've been well recognized by our peers as a leader in the ecotourism travel market. And a little bit about myself. I first went to Africa quite a few years ago now, but lived in Namibia for 2 years in the Peace War. Also extensively traveled through East Africa. Just earlier this year, I was in Zimbabwe, Zambia, and South Africa. Absolutely love the place, so I look forward to kind of sharing some of this knowledge with you. Today's presentation is going to focus on the why, who, when, where, and what of how to plan your safari. Most of this is just considerations that you should take into account as you're looking to travel to Africa, and also looking at all of the different options that are available to you for your adventure. At the end of this presentation, there will be time for questions for you to type those in. So for now, just feel free to write them down or hold them in the back of your mind, and we'll address those at the end of the presentation. So first things first, why should you go to Africa? Most of you probably have a desire to go. But first and foremost, the real reason people generally want to go is for the wildlife. The big five: lion, leopard, rhino, elephant, and Cape buffalo. You can't find charismatic megafauna like this anywhere else on Earth. And your ability to go and get close and take pictures is unparalleled the world over. There's also plenty of other interesting critters as well. The mountain gorillas of Uganda and Rwanda. You have spectacles like the Great Migration in the Serengeti of wildebeest and zebra tracing a clockwise route of several thousand miles over the course of every year. You don't see things like that in other places. There are other critters as well that you may not also think of. Penguins, great white sharks, and whales. These are all in South Africa, the ecosystem down there. And there are also just abundant bird life like nowhere else, just unique species. So there's plenty to wonder at in Africa, and there are plenty of animals and wildlife that you may not have ever heard of or thought of or considered before too. And getting the chance to witness these creatures is unique for sure. In addition to the wildlife, the cultures that you're able to interact with are one of a kind. The ability to have meaningful cross-cultural interactions that are unscripted with indigenous populations is simply wonderful. You can have some really meaningful interactions across cultures. And there are very few populations left where you're able to do that. You can juxtapose that with a modern cosmopolitan Africa, as you can find here in Cape Town, one of the most beautiful cities in the world. This is a nightscape photo with Table Mountain over the city. And, you have all the modern conveniences and a vibrant cosmopolitan culture. The other reason you should go to Africa is for the landscape. Huge, dramatic landscapes, from the snows and glaciers of Kilimanjaro to the white flower beaches of Zanzibar and the Spice Islands, to the Okavango Delta, where the Okavango River empties out onto the plains of Botswana. These are just iconic and unique landscapes that you can't find anywhere else. This was a picture I took earlier this year in Wangi National Park in Zimbabwe that I thought really just kind of captures place of the wildlife in the landscape. You just feel like you are in a storybook about Africa. It's just just an incredible experience. There are plenty of places on the continent also where you feel like you're in another world. Maybe a chief among them. That plant on the left is the Welwitschia, which can live for up to 2,000 years. On the right, you have the dunes of Sossusvlei, and it feels like you're on another planet. It's certainly nothing like what you see around where you live on a day-to-day basis. At the end of the day, it's all about wildlife. This was a video I shot earlier this year when I was in the Greater Kruger ecosystem in South Africa. 2 baby leopards that had just feasted on impala. So they are pretty full and tuckered out. But this is what it's all about, having close, intimate interactions with wildlife. You just can't get this anywhere else. You just can't script it. We could watch this all day, but unfortunately we only have a few minutes for our webinar here, so but pretty cool critters for sure. So after you answer why should you go, the next major question is to ask who's going with you. That really will dictate the type of trip that you're looking for and the type of adventure that you want to have. So initially, we get a lot of inquiries for multi-generational families, and it's nice to be able to offer folks something for everybody at every age level, from children to adults to grandparents accompanying the family as well. There really is something there, especially for kids. Africa really can be a wonderful destination for children, tapping into their innate curiosity of the world around them. Will satisfy that for sure. And there's different programs that kids can do at some of the camps for ages from as young as, say, 6 or 8 all the way up through teens and adults. So wonderful, wonderful experiences, not just wildlife, but again, that cross-cultural interaction can be very meaningful. We also see a lot of couples, and whether that's a couple heading out on a romantic getaway like a honeymoon, or just a couple looking to check off a bucket list trip that they've always wanted to do. That is probably our most common set of traveler. And so thinking about how you want to travel and how you want to spend your time. This is the underwater room in Pemba. What could be more romantic than a night out 12 feet below the waters of the Indian Ocean with all the marine life swimming by? This is one of the coolest rooms in all of Africa. So we can certainly cater to romantic getaways. And we also work with individual travelers, solo travelers looking to travel. A big consideration for solo travelers is that most accommodation is sold as double accommodation. So single travelers will often get penalized with a single supplement to cover the cost of an empty bed in the room. However, there are certainly options and itineraries out there that minimize and avoid the single supplement altogether. So don't rule out travel if you're a solo individual. There are certainly plenty of options for you as well. So that's looking at who's going with you. And then the big question of what do you want to do when you're in Africa? So this is going to be kind of an overview of the different activities on offer. When people think about wildlife, the most common way to interact with that wildlife is out on safari, which means journey in Swahili. And safaris can take a couple of different forms. Typically, it's in the open Land Rover, driving through the landscape and interacting with wildlife. But there's also options like walking safaris, where you get out of the vehicle with your tracker and guide. Those 2 pictures on the bottom are mine from earlier this year. The one on the right is in Zimbabwe when we were tracking some Cape buffalo. And the trick with Cape buffalo is they can be pretty aggressive if you approach them standing up, but they feel much less threatened when you approach in a crouch or on your backside like we were. And so we were able to get quite close and then slowly stand up to have an interesting encounter that you wouldn't normally get. And it makes all the difference having a fantastic guide as well. If you're interacting with wildlife, of course, you want to be able to take pictures. And so I I see a lot of amateur and professional photographers want to go to Africa to be able to capture images like this. It's the wildlife and the landscapes in the place just create the photos, even if you're not a skilled photographer. I am not a skilled photographer, and these are some pictures that I was able to come away with earlier this year. On the left there is a sunken shipping container in Stokey's Pan in Zimbabwe that allows you to get some pretty up close and personal photos of elephants. So putting yourself in the right position to get great photos. Active safaris and other activities are also on offer. In the Laikipia region of Kenya, you can go camel trekking with your family. Kids really enjoy this. Most adults really enjoy it too. On the picture on the right, you can trek for mountain gorillas in Uganda and Rwanda. Some of the only countries in the world where you'll find this. And then this is a video of a close encounter that a guest had with some mountain gorillas. This is highly uncommon, but it just shows you some of the magic that can happen when you're in Africa. So this guy was pretty lucky to be able to interact this close with the mountain gorillas. So that's just a family of gorillas. This guy, again, is really lucky to have an interaction with. In addition to the wildlife, like I mentioned before, cross-cultural interactions are a unique hallmark of East Africa in particular. You can live among the Maasai. Again, it's an indigenous population still keeping to many of their traditional ways. And the cultural exchange that goes on there, both you learning about them and them learning about you, is pretty powerful and transformative stuff. Other things that you can do looking down towards Cape Town, again, I mentioned the cosmopolitan side of Africa, and that's something that most people, I think, overlook. The food and the arts and the winelands of Cape Town are world-class and absolutely a fantastic experience. And it is all part of that fabric of Africa that makes it such a unique place. Perhaps you're a bit more adventurous to the point that you want to climb the highest peak, Kilimanjaro, at 19,340 feet. You can get up onto the glaciers and the snow of Kilimanjaro. It is a non-technical climb, which means as long as you have the ability to carry a pack and walk uphill for quite a few hours a day, you can do it. Again, another way to experience the continent. Perhaps you want something even more adventurous. Victoria Falls is affectionately known as the adrenaline capital of pretty much all of Africa, but certainly Southern Africa, with activities like microlights, whitewater rafting, helicopter tours, and the gentleman there in the lower left picture is doing what they call the Flight of Angels, which is a giant rope swing and over the essentially the entire Victoria Gorge there. And still another way to experience Africa is on a very traditional mobile camping safari. So this offers folks the ability to experience sometimes what would be a more expensive destination, Botswana. By doing a mobile camping safari, you can do it quite a bit cheaper, but still experiencing incredible wildlife and getting an excellent cross-section of the country. On any itinerary that you wind up putting together, there are additional activities that you can include on any given day or at any given place, from hot air ballooning to dinner out in the middle of the Zambezi on a raft, to swimming at the edge of Victoria Falls, or even doing a sleep out under the stars, the darkest skies in the world, in order to experience the Milky Way. So those are just a kind of a small sampling of what you can do on the continent. And now what I consider probably the two biggest questions that you're going to need to answer are: where should you go and when should you go? And one of you, you're going to have to answer one of these, and that will help dictate how you answer the other one. So we'll start with where should you go? When we talk about safaris in Africa, typically we're talking about East Africa and Southern Africa, not so much the Morocco or Egypt or Ethiopia, which is more of a kind of a cultural undertaking, but specifically looking at East and Southern Africa as kind of a home of the safari. In East Africa, we're looking at Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda, and Tanzania as the four major areas of focus. The big draws in this area are the Great Migration, obviously, of wildebeest and zebra in the Serengeti. Again, it's millions of animals tracing 1,000 or several thousand mile clockwise route through the national parks. Just incredible displays of these herds of animals moving is unlike anything else you can see anywhere in the world. And as I alluded to, also East Africa is a prime place to have those cross-cultural interactions with the tribes, the Toga, the Maasai, just really fascinating people to be able to interact with. Out in the western part of East Africa, you have Uganda and Rwanda, the mountain gorillas and primates. It's easy to add on, a little bit less than a week of an extension to a safari in East Africa to be able to go trek for the gorillas or the chimps. And then you have the iconic beaches of Zanzibar and the Spice Islands off the east coast of Tanzania, including Zanzibar and Pemba, which is a little bit quieter island just to the north of Zanzibar. So that is East Africa. In Southern Africa, we're looking at Zambia, Zimbabwe, Botswana, Namibia, and South Africa as kind of the major draw destinations. And just a brief overview of each of these. In Namibia, you have a country on the edge of the Kalahari Desert with these wide open desertscapes, really reminiscent of the American West, but completely unlike the American West in a lot of ways as well. Just beautiful, wide open places, but also with some spectacular wildlife. In particular, Etosha National Park is a big 5 national park. So again, lion, leopard, rhino, elephant, and buffalo can all be found in Etosha, as well as many, many other species as well. So it's not just desert, there are some actual quite lush places as well. In Botswana, you have the Okavango Delta, which I mentioned is the Okavango River emptying out onto the land. It never meets the sea. So you have this kind of water and land area where animals have been concentrated on fingers of land when the delta floods. You can do dugout, Makoro canoe safaris, as you see here, other water-based activities from boats, and then you also have the option to do land-based activities from vehicles or on walking safaris. The wildlife of Botswana is fantastic. You have Victoria Falls and the upper and lower Zambezi, where Zimbabwe and Zambia touch. Botswana is kind of in the mix there too, but Four Corners region. Just beautiful water activities. That picture on the right I took on a sunset cruise on the Zambezi, just one of the most kind of tranquil and relaxing places. It's a nice break to the safari. And then upwards toward Zambia and Zimbabwe, it's a more remote location, many fewer visitors. So you feel like a lot of times you have these parks to yourselves, amazing wildlife. And again, river activities, that picture on the right, we got to enjoy our sundowner cocktails ankle deep in the lower Zambezi. It's just a real beautiful place to spend some time. In South Africa, many people have heard of the Greater Kruger National Park area, and the iconic animals that you'll see here are the leopards and the cats, the predators. You can see there the white rhino, and just a really neat place. It's one of the older national parks in the region, so these animals have grown up seeing visitors, and so you can actually get quite close, which allows for some fantastic photography yeah, it's a wonderful place. And of course, as I mentioned, Cape Town, one of the most beautiful cities in the world, certainly cosmopolitan, and something for every age group. So that is an overview of where you can go, the different options. Let's take a look at when you should go. So for East Africa, kind of a lot of information up here. Hopefully you guys can see my mouse. Don't worry about reading all this. The big takeaway I want you to have is that there are two major seasons, January and February, and then again, June through October. Because of the equatorial climate, there are not huge temperature variations. The seasons are driven by wet season and dry season, or rainy season and dry season. And so June to October is the major dry season. And then they have a little dry season, January and February. In January and February, the big draw is the southern Serengeti when it is calving season. So the wildebeest will, what they call, drop their young. Upwards of 8,000 a day can be born down here during that time. So it's just a real spectacle to behold in January and February. And then that June to October time period, you can see up here that the migration has kind of made its way to the north, upwards into the Masai Mara of Kenya, and then back down into the Serengeti again. You get some spectacular river crossings here of wildebeest, crossing rivers where the crocodiles are often waiting to grab an unsuspecting one. So that's kind of a general overview of the two seasons in East Africa. We'll contrast that with Southern Africa, where there really is just one major season for Southern Africa. And again, don't worry about reading everything that's on here. More look at the colors here. So green is kind of a good time to go. So from April, but really May through September is kind of the best time to go. By October, it really starts to heat up down there. It can be quite hot and humid. If you're okay with heat and humidity, October is a fine time to still go. But your target season is really May through the end of September is great. The earlier part of the year is the green or emerald season, which is the rainy season. You can still travel at that time, and there are actually some great deals to be had during the rainy season because there are far fewer visitors. However, it's also worth bearing in mind that some camps are inaccessible during that time, so you may have a more limited selection of where you can go. The exception to everything that I just said is South Africa, which is actually fantastic year-round. You can have a really great safari and African experience year-round in South Africa. You'll take a note, these two pictures at the bottom were actually taken during green season in Botswana. So the animals don't melt when it rains, but certainly things can be more difficult to access. But you also have some really beautiful landscapes as well with the clouds interplaying with the sun. So yeah. So those are kind of the two major questions. When and where should you go? You're going to have to answer one of those first, and again, that will help you answer the other one. So what's your style? When you guys signed up for this webinar, we asked you, what type of accommodation do you tend to like? And we got all sorts of answers, and the good thing is we can cater to all of those different answers that you provided. Here are some pictures of what we consider standard accommodation. I always have to laugh a little bit because standard is pretty darn good. Those upper two shots from Tandatula in South Africa, and at the bottom there are two shots from Olakira, which is a migration camp in the Serengeti. So these are under canvas camps, so they're in safari tents, but you can see that they're quite nice for safari tents, and extremely comfortable accommodation for sure, and that is at the standard level. From there, we move up a little bit to more well-appointed establishments, more well-appointed rooms. You have Tandatula, you have Simbavati Hilltop up here. That was my breakfast, a smoked salmon, eggs Benedict overlooking a watering hole with elephants out there. And then you have Kapamba, both very well-appointed places. And then at the bottom, you move up the standard level again with Savannah and Tongabezi, just absolutely beautiful accommodations. You really feel like you're living in luxury. From there, you can go to 5-star and 5-star plus type accommodations like the Cape Grace in Cape Town, which is absolutely over the top beautiful. Londolozi in Sabi Sands, long-standing family-run establishment with excellent guides and just truly beautiful, very well done accommodations. Maybe you're looking for something a little bit more unusual. This is in Pui Lodge in South Luangwa, where from October to December, elephants will walk through the lobby to get to their favorite marula tree. Of course, business comes to a halt when that happens. This one here, his name is Wonky Tusk, as you can tell by his slightly bent right tusk there. Yeah, many of our establishments that we work with have some unique aspects to them as well. Old Jogi in Kenya is an excellent option for people looking to travel with a larger group, say 8 people or more, maybe even 6 people, and you can have an exclusive use of this entire accommodation. And not only do you have an exclusive use of the accommodation, but you have exclusive use of the private concession area as well. It's like having your own private national park. So it's just your group, the staff at the lodge, and your guide, and you have the whole place to yourself. So those of you looking for something really exclusive, there are properties out there much like this. And there are options for private groups looking to travel, private safaris. You can have your own guide for the entire time that you're there. There's lots of different options, and there's a lot of flexibility with what you're looking for. So just know that if you can dream it, you can probably do it. It's just a matter of asking the right questions and knowing what you're looking for. That guy up there, that was my guide in Zambia. That's Samuel holding up an elephant leg bone that he was quite proud of finding. So amazing stuff. So that covers your style. And kind of the last thing I want to talk about today are what else do you need to consider? So first and foremost, going it alone and trying to figure all this out by yourself, it's really easy to get stuck, as you can tell by this poor warthog here. And so my advice is talk to an expert, talk to people that know Africa, that can give you advice from not only what to wear, but what the seasons look like in Africa. Chances are where you'll be going, you won't see snow, but it helps to talk to an expert to get the best advice possible about what you should pack and what you should wear and all the details. Important details, as you can see here from everything, is to what immunizations you need, what the age restrictions are at lodges, to how you should pack your luggage and weight restrictions on luggage for bush flights, to voltage converters, and even the lenses that you should bring out on a safari. This is all important information that an expert can help you make decisions on. And the goal of all of this is for you to make the most out of your 2 most precious yet limited resources, which is your time and your money. We really want to make the most out of both of those because we know that that's what you value and that's what we value too. So that is kind of, in a nutshell, in a very quick nutshell, everything that kind of goes into considering how to put together your African adventure. And the goal of all of this is to get you over there so that you can have experiences like this one. And, this was a bull elephant at Sabi Sands Reserve in South Africa that we got to interact with and to share. Just let this play for a minute. He's kind of showing off there, resting his trunk on his tusk. You just don't get interactions like this anywhere else. So that does it for my presentation. And so what I'll do now is I'm gonna open things up to questions so that I can give you some more kind of specific information. So what I'm gonna do is click on, oh yeah, and you'll be able to see questions in the bottom left. Oh, submit, I'm sorry. You'll be able to submit your questions down there on the bottom left. So, okay, so it looks like we've got a couple coming in. The first question is, what are the age limits on family trips? That's a great question. The simple answer is we can accommodate any age. It depends on where you go. There are some destinations that will allow children of all ages. There are other destinations that will only allow children up to age or over age 12. It kind of just depends on the activity. So we need to be a little bit more specific on that. So let's see, let's go to we had a question here from Steve. He said his daughter, age 23, is going to Uganda in May 2017 for service work. His wife and I would like to join her afterwards for a Big 5 safari and gorilla trek. I'm an amateur photographer. Is Uganda safe for this, or should we go somewhere else? That's a great question. I look at this as your safety and security are our utmost priority, and we keep very close tabs on all of the countries that we work in to make sure that you can have as enjoyable as an experience as possible. You know, all travel involves some risk anywhere in the world. You know, going down the street involves some risk. So we keep a close tab on that. We would not send, I wouldn't send a visitor anywhere that I wouldn't personally go myself or send a family member. So we keep close eyes on that. Right now, Uganda is doing great. There has not been any major political unrest or incidents recently, so I feel great about going to Uganda. If you're going to be there, I would also strongly consider Tanzania and Kenya at that time of year. May is still a little bit on the early side. You'll be catching the tail end of rainy season, but it can be a fantastic time to go. So next question from Joe. He's asking, do you have scheduled departures or can we choose a date? We've got both. So scheduled group departures can be really nice because that helps bring the price down. You travel with the same group of people on a set date, but we also have other itineraries that we can customize for you where you travel on flexible dates with your own group. So we can certainly accommodate both of those. And let's see, where to go for the best birding. Ooh, there's a lot of options there. The best birding is probably during the rainy season in Botswana. So that earlier part of the year, during the green season, they get some incredible migratory birds that come down, some from as far away as Europe or even Asia to Botswana. But there are other destinations as well. So yeah, if you're interested in birding, Africa is a birder's paradise for sure. Mira is asking, where is the best night sky? You showed a photo, where was it taken? So I have two recommendations on that. The photo that you saw was from Zambia, from the lower Zambezi, which is certainly dark. But the absolute darkest skies can be found in Namibia. In fact, it got certified as a dark sky certification by astronomers. So it's one of the darkest places on Earth, meaning that it's nearly completely free of all ground light clutter. And having lived there for 2 years, I can attest that I saw more stars than anywhere else. There were so many stars that on a moonless night, I could navigate without a headlamp or a flashlight by just starlight. Like there were so many stars that I was able to make my way around it just by starlight with no moon. Somebody's asking, my wife missed the presentation. Will it be available afterwards online? Yes, we are recording this presentation, so I'll be able to send that out to everyone. And okay, so we have a question from Brenda. Once in Africa, what is the minimum amount of time you recommend for a stay as well as for a safari? And can I come with you? Yes, absolutely, I can come with you on your safari. I'd be happy to. But the minimum amount of time, it really depends. I would say you want to go for a minimum of 10 days, and that's purely because of the distance that you travel to get there. Most of you are going to be coming from the continental US, and so when you spend, essentially 2 days getting there, you want to make the most out of your time there. So I would say consider, at a minimum 10 days, I think gives you a good safari, and it goes up from there. 12 days is excellent. I just finished putting together an itinerary for some folks that are doing 33 days over there. And I guarantee at the end of that time, they're still going to feel like they've only just scratched the surface. So, at a minimum 10, but the sky's the limit with that. Can you combine, Tina is asking, can you combine rafting on the Zambezi with a safari? And is there kayaking anywhere? Whitewater rafting, absolutely. The major draw for whitewater rafting is at Victoria Falls, where you have class 5 whitewater, some of the best single-day drops in the world, both during high water season and low water season. So almost year-round, you have excellent rafting opportunities at Victoria Falls on the Zambezi. As far as kayaking, I am sure that there is kayaking available, but we don't usually work with that on a commercial basis. However, it'd be pretty easy for me to put you in touch with our partners on the ground over there, and they'd be able to get you linked up with the right people for sure. Especially on the Zambezi, I guarantee that there is some world-class rafting available. Let's see. So I think, can you suggest a guidebook or two that would be good reading to help me make some decisions about where to go? Guidebooks can be problematic. I would say the best thing to do would be to go to visit a website like ours. You can go through and click on the different itineraries. And I think in your decision making of where to go, first narrow it down by region. Look at East Africa, look at Southern Africa. I'll send out a link to everyone to my blog where I kind of do a compare and contrast between the two areas. And by looking at those two areas, usually one of those will resonate more with what you're looking for a safari experience than another. And then from there, narrowing it down to country or park or safari experience that you want to have is kind of a personal decision, and no guidebook is going to be able to talk you through that. Yeah, so that's where I would start. I would start with online resources. Suzanne is asking if it's possible to arrange a trip that starts in Ethiopia. Absolutely. We do offer adventures in Ethiopia. I didn't cover that in this presentation, but it's certainly easy to combine Ethiopia with other regions in Africa. And then looks like John's asking, do you have itineraries available online? Absolutely. If you go to www.wildland.com, you can navigate to the Africa portion of the website, and all of our itineraries are on there. We have upwards of close to 40 different African itineraries. And some of those are set and pretty structured, but others are more suggestions and templates that you can work from to kind of create your own custom personalized itinerary that works for you and your family. So I think that we're going to end the questions there. If you have further questions, definitely feel free to email those to me, and I will get back to you. Yeah, I would just like to say thanks to everybody for attending, and hopefully I will hear from you soon to plan your own African adventure.